The stream clip resurfaced at the worst possible moment for Blueface, right while he's still wrestling with the $131,000 defamation judgment, a notice of default on his Canyon country porch, and a third baby mama who's publicly pregnant. So when this old kick/Twitch footage of him putting Neveah Akira and her mother Christina on the spot started recirculating, it hit different. Here's the read on what really unfolded, what got buried, why the mood flipped, and where this lands next. And that worst possible moment part matters more than the repost pages are admitting, because viral clips do not land in a vacuum. They land inside whatever narrative, whether is already hanging over a person's name. By the time this footage started making the rounds again, Blueface was no longer just being read as an impulsive live streamer with chaotic relationship habits. He was being read as a man coming out of prison into a world where his money, his home, his public image, and the mothers tied to his timeline were all being discussed at once. That changes how every old clip feels on rewatch. A joke sounds like leverage. A shrug sounds like fatigue. A mother defending her daughter sounds less like chatter and more like pre-damage control. That's why the replay value here is ugly in a very specific way. On day one, a lot of people watch the stream like they watch every messy household live stream, half laughing, half doom-scrolling, waiting for a crash out. 3 weeks later, after more details stacked up around the house, the debt, the baby timelines, and the repeated public conflicts, the exact same footage started reading like evidence from a broader system. Not evidence in the criminal sense, evidence in the cultural sense, evidence of how this entire orbit behaves under pressure, who talks when they feel cornered, who tries to smooth the room over, who monetizes chaos, who narrates it, and who gets turned into background noise while adults do strategy in front of a camera. And that's the part that makes this clip sticky. Not that anybody screamed. Not that somebody said something wild. Not even that old accusations got dragged back into the room. It's that this stream feels like a family trying to hold itself together while accidentally revealing how badly the beams are bending underneath it. Somewhere in the valley, the AC had given up. A toddler was running around in shorts, and a woman named Christina had just been pulled out of the kitchen and put on camera by her daughter's baby's father. By the time she stood back up, the stream had touched old family racism, alleged cheating, abortion rights, the new baby, a comment about voodoo, and the question every viewer wanted answered, but nobody wanted to ask out loud. Then the toddler opened his mouth, and the whole room cracked. The mood didn't just change, it pivoted on a dime. What makes that opening hit is how unceremonious it is. Nobody walked into frame like they were entering a formal interview. Nobody sat down under studio lights. The whole thing had the energy of a household getting yanked into public view before it had time to put on a face. That matters, because messy internet families usually know when they're performing. Here, the first few beats feel looser than that. A little sticky, a little overheated, a little too real in the domestic details. And that's exactly why the clip stayed alive. Viewers can smell the difference between rehearsed drama and a room that is trying and failing to pretend it's casual. There's also something darker in the setup itself. Christina did not arrive as the star of the stream. She was made relevant by proximity. That's how these households work online. The camera doesn't just film the principals. It starts absorbing the relatives, the children, the old grudges, the family lore, the inherited wounds. A mother can begin as the person in the kitchen and end up as the emotional center of a clip that gets reposted across entertainment pages. That's part of the violence of livestream culture nobody likes to slow down and name. The room decides who becomes a character in real time. And once Christina became a character, the audience did what audiences always do. They started assigning her roles instantly. Defender, enabler, racist relative by association, exhausted grandma, secret strategist, comic relief, background mom who said too much. The problem is she wasn't actually functioning as any one of those alone. She was doing what a lot of older women do in chaotic family systems, trying to keep 5 truths alive at once without letting any single truth blow the whole structure apart. That kind of balancing act always looks unstable on camera because it is unstable. It's also very human. The toddler moment is the hinge because children are merciless truth detectors without meaning to be. Adults can posture. Adults can reframe. Adults can say, "That's not what I meant." Kids repeat the room back to itself. They expose tone before content. The child doesn't need to understand the argument for the audience to suddenly understand that whatever this is, it's not just internet mess. It's being lived. And the second that reality pokes through, the room stops feeling like content and starts feeling like testimony. That is why the mood pivoted so violently. Not because the stream got louder, because it got more honest than it meant to. Weekly receipts like this only land because y'all ride with us. Like the video. Subscribe if this is your lane. Hit the bell so we can keep pulling threads nobody else bothers with. Now let me show you why this clip is hitting harder 3 weeks later than it did the day it streamed. The key is not the clip by itself. The key is the lag. The delay between broadcast and cultural impact. That lag is where this story gets interesting. Because clips like this usually peak fast and die fast. People laugh, clip the craziest 19 seconds, build a moral panic around it, then keep scrolling. This one didn't behave like that. This one aged into relevance. And when a clip ages into relevance, it usually means later events came back and lit up details that looked random the first time. That's exactly what happened here. On first watch, Christina's lines could be dismissed as a mom talking too much on live. On second watch, after the legal reporting, the home reporting, the newer baby storyline chatter, and the repeated family conflict posts started stacking, those same lines sounded calibrated. Still emotional, still messy, but calibrated. Like a person trying to keep a public record from hardening in the wrong direction. That's why 3 weeks matters. Time didn't cool this down. Time contextualized it. The clip in question originates from a Twitch/Kick livestream hosted by Blueface, born Jonathan Michael Porter, featuring his pregnant girlfriend Neveah Akira, her young son Superior, and Neveah's biological mother Christina, who Blueface introduced on camera as "my white mother." Christina is reported to have relocated from the Indianapolis area, and she addressed allegations about Neveah's previous relationship, stated her views on abortion rights, reflected on her late grandfather's documented refusal to shake Neveah's hand, and responded to claims that her daughter had been cheated on. The stream aired during a politically charged stretch of summer 2025, weeks before Blueface was released from the California State Prison in Los Angeles on November 3, 2025, after serving nearly 2 years of a 4-year sentence. By the time the broadcast wrapped, the tone had drifted from a low-stakes baby shower prep session to something heavier, closer to a confessional with a chat scrolling in the background. Blueface, who is due to welcome a son with Neveah, reported due date August 24th, was simultaneously facing legal exposure on multiple fronts. Instagram/Bluroctia. Pause on that release context, because it matters to the air around every post-release clip. According to XXL, Blueface revealed on Instagram on November 3, 2025 that he had been released after serving roughly 21 months, following an August 2024 4-year sentence for violating probation tied to a 2021 assault case. Hot 97 similarly reported that his release came after nearly 2 years behind bars, with his family publicly signaling the homecoming in late October and early November. That means every relationship seen after release is unfolding in the shadow of reentry. Not just romantic reentry, but financial, familial, and reputational reentry too. And reentry is not neutral. Reentry compresses everything. Family expectations, money stress, unfinished legal business, performative gratitude, public curiosity, private resentment. All of it gets stuffed into the same rooms at the same time. So when people watch this stream and try to flatten it into Blueface being messy with his girlfriend, they miss the more useful frame. This is what a post-incarceration celebrity household looks like when the cameras come back on before the structure underneath is stable. That explains why the stream keeps changing temperature. On one level, it's baby shower adjacent domestic content. On another, it's a reassembled household trying to narrate itself before tabloids narrate it for them. Christina is not just answering random prompts. Neveah is not just defending her man. Blueface is not just instigating for engagement. Everyone in the room is negotiating the new terms of visibility after a prison release turned the family name back into a trending topic. And then there's the phrase, "my white mother," which is one of those lines that sounds tossed off until you sit with it. It's funny on the surface, abrasive underneath, and structurally revealing. Because the second he introduces her that way, race is no longer background texture in the story. It's active framing. It tells the audience how to read the room before Christina has even started speaking. It preloads tension. It turns her into a symbol before she can just be a person. That becomes crucial once the conversation moves into older family racism and the grandfather anecdote. What looks like a random live stream, then, is actually carrying at least 4 active storylines at once. Prison release aftermath, interracial family history, pregnancy optics, and household legitimacy. No wonder it started sagging toward confessional territory. Most rooms crack under less. What Christina actually said is the part the reaction clips keep cutting around. So let's put the receipts where they belong. Straight quotes, no paraphrase. Reportedly on her own grandfather. He did not shake Jalen's hand, and he would not shake Jalen's hand. This was at his mother's funeral. Complex on raising her kids through incarceration. I was a kid having kids, and my kids grew up with me. I did raise my kids, right? On her own relationship. I married him as soon as he came out of prison. He married me basically. I held it down while he was locked up. I was with him for 6 years. Then he got locked up. He was gone for about 3. Reportedly on abortion access. It's letting her know she has that option. We're women. We make our own decisions and our own choices. I do believe in abortion. Our body, our choice. On cheating allegations in the household. You cannot control a person. You still stuck with him and you got married? And the moment the room went silent, on the cheating comments aimed at her daughter. I do not like the stuff she says about my grandsons. I do not like that stuff. That is hurtful and it does irritate me. But like I said, I've never met her. Read those 5 lines slowly. They're not a group chat fight. They're a 47-year-old woman trying to hold 3 things at once. Protect her kid, acknowledge the truth of what was said, and refuse to be the villain in someone else's internet story. Blueface, for his part, publicly aligned with her in real time. He reportedly posted, "Ain't nobody in my mama's face. I don't play about my mother," and followed by tying the disrespect to the family's broader history with racism, not the person's current relationship. The chat wasn't buying all of it. Blueface then turned on the comments reading, "Too many false calls. I'm pressing charges on every person that's calling. This is not a test. All right, now we know exactly what was said. Let me show you what was supposed to be hidden in the timing." The reason those quotes matter is not just what they mean individually. It's the order they live in emotionally. First, Christina establishes family history. Then she establishes sacrifice. Then she establishes values. Then she establishes hurt. That is not a random sequence. That is a sequence that moves from old wound to personal credibility, to moral principle, to present grievance. In other words, she's not merely talking. She's building permission for the audience to see her as credible before she asks them to understand why she's upset. That prison wife anecdote is doing more work than it first appears to. When she talks about holding a man down while he was locked up, she isn't only narrating her past. She's placing herself inside a moral tradition that this particular audience recognizes immediately. Loyalty through incarceration, struggle as proof of character, staying power as a form of earned authority. In a space shaped by hip-hop relationship politics, that is not throwaway biography. That is credentialing. Then comes the abortion rights line, and that one is easy to misread if you only hear it as culture war bait. In context, it functions more like boundary drawing. Christina is telling the room that whatever else they want to project onto her daughter's body remains her daughter's jurisdiction. That is a value statement, yes, but it's also a control statement. It says the internet does not get full custodial rights over this pregnancy narrative. And the cheating line, "You cannot control a person," is the cleanest sentence in the whole clip because it's both concession and defense at once. She is not saying cheating didn't happen anywhere, ever, in any form. She is saying a woman cannot be held singularly responsible for another person's behavior. And she is saying it in a format broad enough to protect her daughter without making a new factual claim she may have to carry later. That is why the sentence sticks. It sounds simple. It is strategically simple. Complex's reporting on the broader Neveah / Blueface cheating blow-up gives this section extra weight because it confirms that public cheating admissions were already part of the larger relationship content ecosystem. In the reporting, Blueface admitted on livestream that he cheated on Neveah with Christina, and the argument escalated in front of Neveah's son superior. That means Christina wasn't speaking into a vacuum. She was entering a storyline the public had already been trained to read as unstable. And here's the ugly little truth reaction pages skip. Once a woman's relationship has already been publicly staged as unstable, every later defense of her gets read as denial, even when it's more complicated than that. Christina is fighting not just the comments in that chat, but the narrative inertia created by every previous stream, clip, post, and I cheated, sorry confession that came before her. That is a much harder room to win. 3 weeks before the stream dropped, Neveah was publicly celebrating her pregnancy reveal. 3 days before the baby shower on Sunday, another alleged Blueface baby mama, Rella Baby, was on social media announcing her own 8-week ultrasound. That's the timing most people skimmed past. While Christina was defending her daughter's relationship on stream, Blueface was already linked to at least 3 different mother-of-his-child storylines. Jaden Alexis, whom he shares 2 sons with, Javon and Dre. Rella, pregnant with a baby girl reportedly being named Rella Carlisa. And now Neveah, expecting in late August. Pause. Back up. Christina's whole defense of her daughter, the cheating pushback, the you cannot control a person line, is louder once you know that Rella's reveal happened the same week. The mom didn't say Neveah was perfect. She said there's a difference between a public claim and what's actually true in a household. Under the surface, she's calibrating a message that isn't just for the chat. It's for a court docket eventually. Now layer in the legal timeline. In June 2026, a notice of default was filed on the Porter Canyon Country residence for $92,054.44. Last payment posted in October 2025 YouTube investigative clip. 2 months before that, on April 2025, Blueface was hit with the $131,000 default judgment for defamation against Soulja Boy's baby mama Jacqueline Martinez, and a judge ordered his music royalties redirected to satisfy the debt complex no jumper on Instagram. Read that as a map. While Christina was on stream defending her daughter's relationship against cheating claims, Blueface's royalties were already legally rerouted because of defamation comments he made on a different child support strand entirely. So when Blueface says, "I don't play about my mother," he's saying it from inside a man whose financial rails were being pulled out at the same time. And here's the date nobody was tracking: the police call comments. Chat was making false tip calls to Indiana authorities with her daughter's number. "How did the police have my number?" "As many times as they've been here," Christina said. That's not a meme. That's a documented harassment pattern that, in Indiana, escalates to false informing charges if it crosses a threshold 8 News Now context piece. Quietly, the stream is doing 2 jobs at once. It's a mother defending her daughter. It's also an adult daughter showing the family's legal exposure for anybody tracking harassment complaints. Watch the temperature change when the chat starts having opinions about whether the family is paid enough attention to buy the rapper. This is where the story stops being messy and starts becoming patterned. Because 1 isolated scandal can be impulsive, 2 can be coincidence, 3 or 4 overlapping domestic storylines, timed against legal and financial reporting. That starts looking like a recurring method of public life. The same weeks that carry pregnancy posts also carry debt reporting. The same weeks that carry household defenses also carry outsider claims. The same streams that are supposed to feel intimate keep ending up entangled with public adjudication. Let's tighten the legal side with what is actually on the record. Complex reported that Jacqueline Martinez won a default judgment after alleging Blueface made defamatory statements during his feud with Soulja Boy, including claims implying paternity and sexual contact around her baby shower timeline. In June 2026, Complex further reported that a Los Angeles County Superior Court judge granted a request to redirect Blueface ASCAP and BMI royalties toward the remaining debt, listed there as $123,245 after the earlier default judgment. Yahoo's summary of the same development likewise reported that his royalties were being routed to satisfy the judgment because he failed to respond to the lawsuit. Notice what that does to the emotional logic of the stream. Once a man's speech has already cost him a default judgment in one baby mama adjacent conflict, every later household live stream becomes riskier by default. Not because every sentence is illegal, because the family is now operating in a climate where words are no longer cheap. A joke can become an exhibit. A boast can become a liability. A defense can become discoverable culture. Now put the house next to that. A Santa Clarita outlet reported in January 2026 that Blueface listed his Canyon Country home for $1.25 million after his release from prison, describing the 5-bedroom property and tying the sale to his post-release period. Even without accepting every foreclosure-adjacent rumor that grows around celebrity homes, the public existence of housing chatter on top of debt chatter on top of relationship chatter is enough to change the psychological feel of the stream. The audience senses pressure, even before it can name the source. And then there is the welfare check layer. Separate coverage around another Blueface / Nevaeh stream reported that police came to the home after viewers called authorities over a pool incident involving Neveah while she was pregnant. The Mirror described officers asking whether she had been kicked in the stomach, with Neveah denying a physical altercation and declining medical attention. Complex also covered the welfare check angle after the pool clip. Whether you think those callers were overreacting or responding in good faith, the pattern is the same. Viewers are no longer just watching. They are intervening. That is a brutal threshold for a household to cross. Once the audience believes it has standing to summon police into your home based on what it sees on stream, the broadcast is no longer entertainment in any simple sense. It has become quasi-civic theater. The viewers start acting like jurors, watchdogs, medics, and haters all at once. And the family, whether it likes it or not, starts speaking like every sentence may have a second audience later. Which is why Christina's presence matters so much. She doesn't talk like a trained influencer. She talks like somebody who still believes words can clarify things if she just says them plainly enough. That kind of person always gets chewed up first once the audience has started filing emotional paperwork of its own. Tiny fragments. 3 of them. The voodoo line. Christina said on the record, "I wish I knew how to do voodoo, 'cause if I knew how to do voodoo, everybody would be acting right." The Blueface Nevaeh Akira and Blueface Jr. Rella baby mama web is exactly the mess where that joke lands. She's not literally threatening anybody. She's saying out loud what his team keeps trying to disclose in subtweets, that if there was a button to control outcomes in this family tree, she'd press it. Read it again when you also remember she later said, "She tries to talk a woman into an abortion. So my mama care." That joke sits 1 second after a public broadcast about being pro-choice. That's not a gaffe. That's a woman who grew up poor, married a man who went to prison for 3 years, and is now fluent enough in a platform to weaponize the chat against itself when the algorithm feels like moving against her daughter. The reason the voodoo line traveled is simple. It compresses helplessness into comedy. That's what a lot of family humor does under stress. It reaches for folklore, exaggeration, superstition, or old-school saying language because direct control is gone. People who actually feel powerful don't joke about needing magic. People joke about magic when normal tools have stopped working. When the room is chaotic, the men are inconsistent, the internet is judging, and your daughter is visibly carrying the next consequence in her body. "I wish I knew voodoo" is less a threat than a confession that reason clearly hasn't fixed anything. Superior's echo. The toddler kept running into the frame and, reportedly, repeating phrases he picked up from the broadcast. Reported outlets noted Superior shouting back profanity he'd heard during the day, with adults silencing him midstream. That's the texture moment in the stream. The mood didn't break because somebody cursed. It broke because a 7-second holder of attention, a kid, reminded everybody in the room that this isn't content. It's a household. And the household has been training its members to perform for at least 3 generations. Christina trained her kids on a horse farm in Indiana. Neveah trained Superior to mirror the room's tone, and Superior was now echoing back the room's posture to the room. And that echo does one more thing. It destroys the illusion of adult compartmentalization. Adults love pretending children aren't really listening. Children listening is half the point of this entire internet era. They absorb posture. Not just vocabulary. They learn which moments get laughs, which tensions get softened with jokes, which humiliations get normalized because the camera is still rolling. So when Superior repeats what he hears, the stream briefly stops being about scandal and becomes about inheritance. Not financial inheritance, behavioral inheritance. The dress versus sweats moment. Blueface, early in the stream, poked at Nevaeh's shower fit. I think it's formal. She shrugged it off. It doesn't matter. I could pull it off. Make it look like something that it's not. That line tracks. The shower becomes a series of paid admission requests and gift-only entries. By that point, TikTok source. What's a shower when the whole family tree is on a paywall? That exchange is tiny, but it says a lot about the atmosphere. Make it look like something that it's not is one of those accidental thesis lines people drop when they're used to living inside performance economies. It applies to clothing, sure. It also applies to relationships, respectability, celebration, motherhood optics, comeback narratives, all of it. If you're in a household where every event can become content, then aesthetics are never just aesthetics. They're armor. They're narrative scaffolding. Each forensic beat hits a different member of the household. Mom's humor, the kid's mirror, the daughter's business model. All three are different surfaces for the same underlying story. An extended family monetizing the relationship by broadcasting it. And that's where people get squeamish, because monetizing the relationship sounds cynical until you admit the obvious. In this ecosystem, relationships are part of the revenue architecture. That doesn't mean the feelings are fake. It means the feelings are being processed in a structure that pays for access, outrage, curiosity, and recurrence. A baby shower is not just a baby shower if the audience has already been conditioned to read it as episode 5 of a saga. The joke, the child, the outfit, those aren't random details. They're the clues that tell you what genre of story you're really in. Different outlets read this stream with different markings. Here's the live split. Complex framed the clip around the cheating allegation dispute, titling it around Blueface telling Neveah not to make it about Superior, i.e., a content dispute more than a family one complex. Their thesis was the household was treating the toddler as content leverage. All About the T/Bluroctia framed the same stream as a Rella baby collision, pointing out that the alleged third baby mama's reveal dropped within the same week. Their thesis: the household was being publicly performance managed by the timing Bluroctia Facebook. No jumper, academics adjacent. Leaned on the legal layer, the defamation judgment, the royalty redirect, the notice of default, to argue the whole family was one bad IVF cycle from a different outcome. No jumper / Instagram. Shade Room read it as a maternal defense story, almost sympathetic, painting Christina as a mom standing between her daughter and the comments. Instagram / the Shade Room. The loudest counter-narrative, and yes, I'll steelman it for a beat, is that this is just a normal family stream where nothing dramatic happened. Christina is just answering random chat prompts. The voodoo line is a joke. The cheating line is a misunderstanding. The toddler just said something funny, and the room laughed. That's the clean version. Now dismantle it. If it's just a family stream, why is one alleged baby mama on a paywall for a shower, while another alleged baby mama, Rella, is publicly announcing her own pregnancy 2 days earlier? Hot new hip-hop. If the cheating line is a misunderstanding, why is Blueface herself publicly responding to it on stream and not letting it die in the chat? If voodoo is just a joke, why is it the only line in the stream that the algorithms seem to amplify? You can't hold both. Either it's a family stream that happens to surface real legal stress across 3 mother-child pairs simultaneously, or it's a content play with skin in the game. The receipts favor the second. The temperature of the room flipped because more than one person in it had something to lose. Let me be fair to the nothing happened crowd for one more second, because there is a real instinct behind that reading. A lot of families really do sound bizarre when outsiders watch them for 10 uninterrupted minutes. People interrupt. Kids repeat things. Old wounds pop up sideways. Somebody tells a joke at the worst possible moment. Somebody gets defensive. Somebody overexplains. That does not automatically make the moment strategic. Sometimes it is just family static. But what makes that defense weak here is repetition. Not intensity, repetition. We are not dealing with one odd domestic clip from a household that is otherwise private. We are dealing with a family ecosystem that repeatedly processes conflict in public, repeatedly folds children into the visual field, repeatedly cross-pollinates relationship drama with monetized attention, and repeatedly finds itself in legal or quasi-legal conversations soon after. At a certain point, calling that just normal family chaos becomes less compassionate and more willfully blind. Media framing exposes that blind spot. Complex gravitates toward the argument mechanics, because that's the most legible flashpoint. Cheating admission, argument, child present. Reaction pages gravitate toward competing baby mama timing, because timeline warfare is irresistible in gossip circuits. Sympathetic pages center the mother, because maternal defense humanizes the clip. Legal adjacent pages center the money, because money converts chaos into stakes. None of those frames are entirely wrong. They're incomplete in different directions. The more honest reading is that the clip is a prism. Spin it one way, and it's about motherhood. Spin it another, and it's about public humiliation. Spin it again, and it's about re-entry pressure after prison. Spin it again, and it's about the economics of attention. The reason it stayed alive is because multiple narrative machines could use it without fully exhausting it. That's also why the counter-narrative never quite lands. If nothing dramatic happened, why does the room feel so pre-defensive? Why are so many remarks phrased in ways that sound half personal, half record-building? Why does the child's interruption feel like a breach in the format rather than just cute family noise? Why does the audience keep behaving like it has jurisdiction? You do not get that kind of atmosphere from a truly ordinary stream. Ordinary streams don't feel like everybody in the room is trying not to say the one thing that would rearrange the hierarchy. Here's the read nobody's printing. The mainstream version of this story is, Blueface girlfriend's mom went viral defending her daughter on a Twitch stream. That's true. It's also lazy. The actual pattern is symbolic weaponized family broadcasting. Blueface isn't just streaming with one woman. He's broadcasting a four-mother network, Christina, Neveah, Jaden, Alexis, Rella, into each other's timelines in real time. Christina's defense of Neveah's relationship on this stream is happening while Rella's reveal is happening while Jaden's defamation case redirects Blue's royalties, while Carlisa hemorrhages in another tabloid thread. That's not a family stream. That's a holding company that's publicly airing out its internal council sessions through Instagram Lives and Twitch Q&As. And here's what makes that read sharper. Every mother in the network has a specific financial exposure. Christina's family has the notice of default on the Canyon Country home YouTube investigative. Jaden's family has the $131,000 default judgment complex. Rella's family has a baby shower and ultrasound rollout timed for algorithmic reach. Neveah's family has a due date inside the notice of default window of his property. Each mother on stream is not just defending her child. She's establishing that the child is part of her financial record. That's how you respond to a cheating allegation on broadcast when your daughter's name is also legally entangled in the rapper's estate. The idea that any of this is being symbolic weaponized is the kind of read a fan account writes when it wants to sound important for a sponsor. Christina was just being a mom, and the internet is being weird about it. If jazz radio had this many baby mama subplots, it'd have been operational in 1962. Mom is a single mom, raised 2 kids while her husband was locked up. And now she's on stream defending her daughter, while her ex-grandson's wife is suing for $131,000. That's heroic, not strategic. A grandma is doing PR reps on behalf of a household that has more public attention than it can metabolize. It's not strategy. It's exhaustion. What if the stream wasn't the fight? It was the witness statement. Watch how that lands. The mood shifted from comedic to confessional because Christina didn't show up to defend her daughter. She showed up to put a record on file. Every line is calibrated for a future motion. The voodoo joke softens the cheating disclosure. The grandfather racism disclosure reframes the cheating allegation as a structural problem, not a personal one. The abortion defense locks in a values clause. The cheating, you cannot control a person, line is the actual rebuttal to public commentary that could be used in a custody filing. The streamer didn't pivot on a dime because the joke landed. The streamer pivoted because Christina's lawyer, if she had won, would have told her to be detailed, specific, and unprovoked. That's what happened. The mom who raised kids while her husband was incarcerated is now reading receipts in real time on a Twitch Q&A. Not because she wants to, but because the legal document she needed to file was a spoken one. That, by the way, is why the voodoo line sounded unhinged to the audience and sounded strategic inside the household. The audience heard a joke. The household heard a settlement position anchor. If this family was running a corporation, this stream would have been called an investor call. And yes, that sounds harsh until you notice how often the household already behaves like a corporation without admitting it. There are flagship relationships, side narratives, loyalty tests, audience segmentation, rollout timing, brand-damaging incidents, and periodic crisis communications disguised as spontaneous lives. The wildest part isn't that this family monetizes drama. A lot of internet families do that. The wildest part is how often they seem to accidentally reveal the management layer underneath the drama. Think about what a corporation does during instability. It issues statements, contains damage, reassures stakeholders, reframes negative events, and keeps the product moving. Now think about what happened here. Christina reassures the room that her daughter is not uniquely culpable. Blueface reasserts family loyalty language. The conversation repositions racism, betrayal, and bodily autonomy into a broader explanatory frame. The house stays live. The content doesn't stop. That is not identical to a boardroom, obviously, but it rhymes with one in a way that should make people a little uneasy. It also explains why exhaustion and strategy are not opposites here. The internet loves pretending those are separate categories. Either someone is sincerely tired or they are cunningly managing optics. Real family systems under pressure do both. They improvise strategy out of exhaustion. They weaponize whatever language is available because the cleaner institutions, privacy, legal counsel, healthy boundaries, non-public conflict resolution, either failed them or were never really built in the first place. So when I call this a witness statement, I'm not saying Christina sat down with a notarized plan. I'm saying the room had reached the point where ordinary speech had started doing the work that formal paperwork often does in damaged public households, clarifying roles, signaling values, disputing narratives, and preserving future deniability. That's why the vibe felt off. The stream was pretending to be casual while functioning as record-making. And once you see that, a lot of other things click into place. Why the humor keeps landing right next to serious claims. Why older family history gets introduced in the middle of present conflict. Why the room keeps oscillating between clowning and pleading. Why viewers sense importance without always being able to articulate why. The house is speaking two languages at once. The language of entertainment and the language of future defense. That dual language is what made the stream so memorable. It is also what made it sad. 3 futures, no labels. The first path is the most likely and the most painful. By September 2026, after the alleged August 24th due date of Blueface son with Neveah, the legal exposure multiplies. The defamation royalty redirect to Jacqueline Martinez stays in effect, and any new streaming revenue from the household splits across at least 3 child support arrangements complex. Watch how the chatter frames the kid's birth as a comeback arc instead of an exposure event. That's the trap the family is walking into. The opposition fails to land their narrative only if Blueface's team stays off camera. They won't. The second path flips the table. The notice of default on the Canyon Country residence is the surprise hinge in this whole story. If Blue's team refinances the property before a foreclosure auction lists it publicly, the same successful comeback narrative the chat wants to use against Neveah's child support gets reabsorbed into a responsible father. Arc YouTube investigative. The opposition fails here because the domestic record shows a man trying to make payroll, not chasing clout. The household wins re-entry to the industry. The toddler on stream is the only one who didn't have to perform for it. The third path is the aftershock 5 years out. By 2031, the cultural residue of Blueface narrative will not be Thoshiana or the prison stint. It'll be this clip and the Christina quote. The cultural memory of the era will be the line, "You cannot control a person," spoken by a mom standing between her daughter's relationship and the public commentary about it. The opposition's failure mode here is they're betting their legacy on the music. They should be betting on the household they were loudest about. The household moves into the canon, not the singles chart. The arc closes on the toddler. 3 mothers in a row, and the chat still picked the wrong enemy. Let's widen those futures a little, because each one depends on a different kind of public attention. In the first path, the family keeps mistaking visibility for leverage. That's the danger. Post-release celebrity households often believe more access will stabilize the narrative. Another live, another explanation, another funny moment with the kids, another proof of love shot, another family gathering that shows everybody is good. But if the underlying structure is already being strained by debt, prior judgments, and competing relationship storylines, more visibility can actually accelerate fragmentation. The audience becomes a pressure multiplier. Every new attempt to seem normal creates fresh raw material for critics, gossip pages, or opposing narratives. In the second path, the household learns restraint, not moral restraint, necessarily, but strategic restraint. Fewer open-room confessions, fewer multi-person live streams, fewer moments where children drift into the frame, while adult tension is still live. More controlled appearances, more obvious separation between domestic life and monetized drama. More respect for the fact that the internet keeps receipts longer than anybody in the room seems to. If that shift happened, a lot of this would cool down fast. The problem is households built on public intimacy rarely know how to stop without feeling like they're vanishing. And that brings us to the third path, the memory path. Legacy does not preserve what the artist thinks is important. Legacy preserves what the culture can retell easily. Sometimes that's the hit. Sometimes it's the scandal. Sometimes it's one weirdly perfect line that captures an entire era's emotional architecture. You cannot control a person, has that quality. It is specific enough to feel lived, broad enough to travel, and sad enough to stick. If this whole orbit keeps churning, that line may outlive half the music chatter around it. There's another possibility tucked inside all three paths, though, and it's the one nobody in the comments seems interested in because it's too unglamorous: attrition. Not explosive collapse. Not triumphant comeback. Attrition. The slow wearing down that happens when every personal development gets forced through the same public machinery. Even people who keep winning attention can lose steadiness. They can lose clarity. They can lose the ability to tell which conversations belong in a kitchen, which belong in a lawyer's office, and which should never have had a camera near them at all. That's why the toddler remains the most haunting figure in the whole thing. He is not important because he says the funniest accidental line. He is important because he is the one person in the room whose relationship to the moment is not yet strategic. He is reacting, echoing, absorbing. That makes him the cleanest barometer of what this environment really is. And if the story keeps moving the way stories like this usually do, that's the part people will come back to later with a wince. You saw what I saw. Not the viral version, the structural one. Like the video if this read landed for you. Subscribe to keep pulling threads other channels skip. And hit the bell so part 2 lands in your feed the second it's ready. The household is running another investor call real soon. You want to be in the room before the chat destabilizes it again. Y'all ride with us, and that means everything. Run it back.